This is the game I'm developing. But why am I making it? Let's find out. By the way, this was my Saturday activity chart. 10 years ago. And here's a question. What do you think this big purple part is? Here's a hint. This channel is all about game development. So think about it for a moment. Everyone, imagine this. When a brand new game you've been dying to play finally gets released, what would you do? This channel is about game development, so I assume most of you here are game lovers. If I give you this hint, I bet almost everyone will get the answer right. The answer is work. Honestly, 10 years ago, except for eating and bathroom breaks, I spent all my time working. This schedule looks insane, but I really lived like this. I'm sure some of you have also pulled an all-nighter just to meet a deadline, right? And you know how it is. Once the work is done, you just collapse and sleep like you're dead. Alright, so this was Saturday. But what about Sunday? The day after I pulled that all-nighter. Here's another chart. There's a big purple part again, and the hint is, it starts with the letter S. Can you guess what it is? But here's the twist. The answer is also work. I know it sounds completely insane, but it really happened. I worked for 2 days straight. At that point, it didn't even make sense anymore. And then came Monday. Of course, it was also filled with work. At this point, you might think, come on, that's impossible. You only have 10 subscribers, and now you're just making up stories to get more, right? But no, this is the truth. Well, except for one small lie. I didn't actually work until the end of that Monday. Because before I could finish, I lost consciousness and collapsed. You might think the story goes like this. I got sick of my job, so I turned to game development. But that's not the case. This happened more than 10 years ago. Back then, I wasn't making games at all. I've only been doing that for about 2 months now. At that time, I was still determined to keep working hard. I wasn't rich, so there was no choice but to work. I really didn't want to, but I made up my mind to go back and return to the same company. But the company showed no mercy at all. Normally, you'd expect some consideration for an employee who had collapsed from overwork, right? But no. Look at this. This was my daily schedule after returning to work. Isn't it insane? I was almost completely tied down by the company. And on top of that, I was transferred to a location that took me 2 to 3 hours to commute. One way. That's crazy, isn't it? I kept working every day until late at night, even while struggling with sleep disorders. Of course, I eventually had to move closer to the office, paying for it out of my own pocket. The company I worked for claimed to be a meritocracy. If you had the ability, you could rise. That was their selling point. And I believed those words. So I kept working hard as a software engineer, giving everything I had. My boss used to say this to me all the time. It's all your fault. But the truth is, my boss was often the one who was wrong. Even when I pointed out the mistakes, he never listened. After blaming me over and over, it would sometimes turn out that he was the one at fault. Looking back now, it was completely abnormal. I remember spending hours telling him, no, you're the one who's wrong. I was so angry that I probably came across as disrespectful without even realizing it. Of course, I was never recognized under my old boss. Promotion was out of the question. But then a turning point came. I was transferred to work under a different manager, and this manager valued me highly. He saw that I could think for myself, act independently, and get the work done. He even said I was a capable engineer. He couldn't understand why someone like me was stuck at such a low rank. My manager truly valued me, and I even received high marks on my evaluations. But still, I was never promoted. Why? Because people in upper management, people who had never even seen my work, refused my raise. And then I realized something shocking. There were many people in the company who were less capable than me, yet earned a better salary. Even the people I was teaching were making more money than I was. Some spent hours double-checking data that was already guaranteed to be correct by the program, and they still earned more than me. The reason was simple. They were close to upper management. It left me with a deep sense of frustration. What had all my hard work been for? And in that moment, I became certain. No matter how hard I worked, I would never be rewarded. And even if I changed jobs, it would all depend on who my boss was. I wanted to find a place where my efforts would truly be recognized. That's when I decided to use my career and skills as a software engineer to pursue game development. I decided to make my game using a game engine called Unity, but I had absolutely no idea how to use it. Still, I couldn't wait around. So after just 1 hour of tutorials, I jumped straight into making my own game. But before I could actually start making the game, I had to choose a genre, and the one I chose was roguelike. The reason wasn't just because the genre is popular, it's also because the development cost is relatively low. First, generate a random map. Next, generate enemies. Find the stairs to the next floor. Generate a map. Spawn enemies. Explore the floor until you find the stairs to the next one. And then repeat this loop over and over. Once you build this system, the game is essentially complete. Compared to other genres, you can see why the development cost is much lower. If you've ever seen gameplay of Shiren the Wanderer, it's easy to understand. First, a random map is generated. The player fights enemies while searching for the stairs to the next floor. By defeating enemies, gaining levels, and collecting items, the player progresses in a way that gives them an advantage. When you find the stairs, move on to the next floor. When you go down the stairs, you move to the next floor. A new random map and new enemies are generated. Then the player searches for the stairs again to advance further. This loop continues until the dungeon is cleared. Some of you might be thinking, is it really that low cost? Well, what you're looking at now is a game I built in about 2 months using Unity. Of course, it's not finished yet. But don't you think the core system already looks a lot like Shiren the Wanderer? A random map is generated, enemies spawn randomly, you find the stairs and move on to the next floor. As you can see, this loop is already complete. I'm not wealthy, so I still work 8 hours a day at my job. On top of that, I'm also running this YouTube channel alongside game development. If I had chosen a genre with high development costs, it would have been extremely tough. After all, even making just one video for YouTube easily takes me several hours. Of course, I didn't choose this genre just because the development cost is low. Roguelikes are also a very popular genre with huge potential. And within roguelikes, I see incredible possibilities in the style of Shiren the Wanderer. In Japan, Shiren is well loved. It actually started as a spin-off of Dragon Quest, one of Japan's biggest RPGs, with the game Torneko's Great Adventure. That game sold close to 1 million copies and became a massive hit. From there, the Mystery Dungeon series spread across Japan. The key point was that Dragon Quest helped introduce the concept to players. But outside Japan, Dragon Quest was relatively unknown at the time, so it never took off in the same way. Still, roguelikes of this kind have all the charm and depth to become a big hit globally. And since the population outside Japan is far larger, I believe that once people truly recognize it, the potential is enormous. In fact, Shiren the Wanderer has very high reviews on Steam, but it doesn't look like Spike Chunsoft is really pushing it overseas. The game only supports English, Japanese, and Chinese. That means players in Spanish-speaking and Arabic-speaking regions are almost completely unreached. Sure, those who can read English can play it, but that's still a huge missed opportunity. So I can't help but wonder, what if I could reach people all over the world with this channel and with the game I'm making? What if I could help more people around the world discover my game, and also discover Shiren the Wanderer? Wouldn't it be exciting if this genre suddenly became mainstream? If the game earned some recognition in the English-speaking world, I plan to eventually support other languages as well. That's why I'm designing and implementing it in a way that allows the language to be switched easily. Some people might think I should just focus on game development and forget about YouTube. But I believe that without YouTube, this project will never succeed. No matter how good a game is, if nobody knows about it, it will simply disappear. What I call a zombie game. On Steam, more than 50 games are released every single day. That's over 1,500 games in just 1 month. For an indie developer without advertising, avoiding obscurity is almost impossible. Without a way to reach people outside of Steam, the chances of being noticed are nearly zero. And since Steam pushes games with no traction to the very bottom, such a game would truly never see the light of day. It's been about 2 months since this project began. I've been giving it everything I have. After finishing my day job, I would spend all my remaining time on game development and making videos. I think I was working at least 3 hours every single day. At first, what I had didn't even look like a game, and I had no idea how to use Unity. Whenever I wondered, how do I even do this? I asked ChatGPT, learned from it, and kept building. As a software engineer, I could write code, but when it came to Unity, I was a complete beginner. Problems came up all the time, but each time I struggled, thought it through, and managed to solve them. Even though I was working on it every day, I was really anxious about whether this project would succeed. I believe it's a field with huge potential, but there's always the chance that it's just my own wishful thinking. And when I think about that, I really respect entrepreneurs, especially those who challenge something completely new. They take on massive financial risks, to bet on something without any guarantee of success. Of course, I don't mean to compare myself to real entrepreneurs, but in a way, I'm doing the same thing, challenging something with no guarantee of success. I was putting more energy into this project than into my actual job. When I first joined the company, I seriously aimed to rise all the way up to president. If the me from back then could see me now, he'd probably say, "Are you stupid?" Of course, even now, I sometimes think I'm being stupid. A part of me says, why not just focus on your job? But as I explained at the beginning, working hard at my job would never be rewarded. That's why I have no choice but to put everything into game development now. Still, even while thinking I might be foolish, I completely immersed myself in this work for the past 2 months. How many hours have I spent on game development and running this YouTube channel? Probably more than 200 hours. Game development is one of the toughest genres on YouTube because the workload is enormous. If I stop developing, I'll run out of content right away. That means I have to invest a huge amount of time into development itself. And on top of that, I have to study how to grow the channel, create videos, and keep posting them. Handling all of this heavy work is what has brought me this far. And this is the result of 2 months of effort. 10 subscribers. 10. After more than 200 hours of work, I only have 10. Other game development channels that started after me passed 100 subscribers with just their very first video. Clearly, my results are not good. I'd be lying if I said it wasn't frustrating. But I'm not dissatisfied. This is nothing like the unfair evaluation system at my company. Here, if the content is good, people will subscribe. If I don't grow, it just means my content wasn't good enough. I need more analysis, more improvement. It's all on me. That's why I'm not dissatisfied. Instead, I'm grateful to the 10 people who did subscribe. Today's video wasn't just a progress update. It was my story of how this channel began. No matter the country, society is full of unfairness. I think many people can relate to my situation. There are countless people in the world who worked hard, yet didn't end up living the life they wanted. But I want to say, don't give up. If this channel succeeds, I believe it can give hope and courage to people like that. This is a game development channel, but I'd be happy if it could become more than that. A channel that gives people hope. Maybe it sounds idealistic, but if I succeed, I want to use that success for something good. So if you'd like to support me, please like, comment, and subscribe. Look forward to next week's video too. New episodes every Sunday. By next January, I'll work hard so I can showcase some gameplay footage. It won't be fully completed yet, but I want to bring it to a presentable state.